So it looks like the UK are facing a meat shortage. Not just meat, it'd be meat, so beef, lamb, and poultry, because of the lack of staff from the EU. And once again, just to make the point clear, I'm not blaming EU staff for leaving the UK. They did what they thought was they did what was in their best interests, and I can't blame them for that. If there was no work going here, or if they didn't feel welcome within the UK and they returned to maybe their native countries, maybe to another EU country, because they have free movement among 27 other member states. Well, I guess it would be 26 other member states, and we don't. So maybe they found opportunities elsewhere outside of the sector. Who knows? Especially because I don't know about Britain specifically, but meat production in America definitely tumbled massively. I'm assuming the UK was probably similar when restaurants shut. Big assumption on my part, I know, but we'll roll with it. So the UK faces shortages of British produced meat as problems with the recruitment continue, the industry said. So, we can't even get good old British meat on the table. Not to forget that once we start doing import checks, we're going to struggle to get foreign meat on the table as well. So, not a great situation. Brexit and the Rona have meant that EU workers have returned to their own countries, putting a squeeze on production. Again, I'm not blaming EU citizens for this. This is just another consequence of Brexit. The poultry industry is reporting a 10% fall in the number of birds being slaughtered for meat in recent weeks. So, obviously that's a massive shortage considering how big the kind of poultry industry is within the UK. Chicken is very popular within the UK. Meat is very popular within the UK, and a 10% shortage is a massive amount. But vegans said the labour shortage could spark much needed change. I'm tempted to tell the vegans to get out, but the more I kind of think about it, the more I think going vegetarian is worth it for a good few reasons, and it's probably something I'm going to be thinking about in the next few months. About 1 billion birds are slaughtered, prepared, packed in the UK per year, with the industry heavily reliant on EU nationals, especially for lower skilled jobs. And that's that phrase again, lower skilled jobs, and that means they should be easily replaceable, right, with, British people who could, fill in with these lower skilled jobs. Or is it the case that these jobs are very difficult to do, very low paid, not the best working conditions, and therefore people don't want to do it in this country? And therefore we relied on, other people, foreign labour, to come in to do the jobs that British people didn't want to do. And the simple fact is, even if you did increase the wages, I still don't think a lot of British people would want to do those jobs, because it's genuinely hard work. It's very difficult to do. And the simple fact is, some people in this country don't want to do it. If you're seeing here, a 10% fall in certain sort of processes happening because of the lack of EU staff, it does tell you the industry has taken a massive hit from this. And the simple fact is, people in this country aren't replacing those jobs as fast as Brexiteers wanted them to. That's why they all keep talking about easing restrictions on visa requirements for certain industries, because we're desperate. We've got a massive shortage within agriculture. Now we've got a massive shortage within the meat industry. I guess you would class that as agri-foods. We have a massive shortage in meat processing, and a massive shortage in heavy goods vehicles. So, it's all kind of combining all together to raise food prices really high. And people will struggle because of it. They will. About 1 billion birds are slaughtered, and 1 billion birds slaughtered, prepared, packed in the UK. I know I've mentioned that, but could you imagine a 10% drop in 1 billion birds? That's a lot. That's a lot. I ain't going to do the maths for you, but that's a lot. But migrants have been returning to their home countries due to Brexit effects, including a weaker pound. So obviously, when people talk about, the pound always fluctuates, even though it's not been as great as I think it was in 2016, that means for people sending money back home, that money's worth less. And so working within the UK, it doesn't make as much sense. A trend exacerbated by the Rona, the British Poultry Council have said, BPC. So what you can see here is a combination of the weakened pound combined with the pandemic, which has basically expedited, I think is that the word, pushed more aggressively the changes in Brexit. Just like how the pandemic has meant that people working from home is becoming the norm, the pandemic has basically meant that people from the EU have left quicker than I think they would have done. Once they get home, many may decide not to return. That could be due to the fact that they're going to need settled status when they come back. Them leaving may be problematic for them getting settled status. It may be easier just to work in another EU country, even if they make less money, because they won't have to worry about the rug being pulled under them. They won't have to worry about proving that they have settled status, proving that they have enough money to live on and stuff like that. Getting a visa, which can be quite expensive. They don't need to worry about that sort of stuff. So again, another Brexit dividend here. Meat producers have been trying to counter these effects by increasing automation, which again is not necessarily a bad thing. But how quickly can you do automation in order to make up for the lack of staff from the EU, and also raising wages for workers, which is a great thing. When people talk about EU workers reducing wages, I think it's by about 1%, which isn't a lot, especially if you're on the lower end of the scale. It does have a slight impact though when you have excessive amounts of labour that are easy to access. But I'm not, attacking, EU workers for that. That's where unionisation comes in. That's when going on strike comes in. Those are the things that can be done to increase wages. But the simple fact is now with the labour shortage in certain sectors, it means wages inherently go up because now you're fighting each other for workers. That's how it always should be. Nevertheless, skill shortage persists. I thought you said these are low-skilled jobs. They should be easy to train people, right? Especially in rural areas with high employment rates, the BPC have said. So in areas where you have high employment as is, it's much harder to recruit people because they might be happy within their job, and therefore you'd have to pay them more to leave whatever job they're doing to join your industry, your meat processing plant, which is difficult because if you increase wages, that means typically prices will go up or your business will become unviable. These are the problems businesses are looking at now because of Boris Johnson and because of Brexit. Boris Johnson, who very famously, said no one did more for the banks than I did, but also said he's not the big fan of Brexit using an expletive. Chief Executive Richard Griffiths said we generally operate in areas of high local employment, so there's a limit to availability of UK workers, and there's a negligible appetite for UK workers to move from other parts of the country, and that's because I think living costs are quite high. Renting, all that kind of stuff is very expensive. So he's not, this person here, Richard Griffiths, is saying we can't get people to kind of move around the country to come to these areas to work within meat processing, especially when I think there'll be certain seasons where they would have work and certain seasons they wouldn't. So once again, these workers, when they talk about unemployment being, whatever 4 and 5%, and we can use that to replace EU labour, that simply doesn't make sense because unemployment isn't always where the employment is. That's something Phil from A Different Bias talks about a lot. Say you have, say 5% unemployment in London, okay, and then in say Grimsby, which is an example he would give out, there's a lack of processors in fish. There's a lack of fish processing people, right? Those people from London aren't going to move to Grimsby to get those jobs because it's just too far away and it's just ridiculous. So that's why you're having problems in these areas, and that's what certain Brexiteers and other people don't understand. You're not going to move across country for a low paid job. You just wouldn't do it unless you're desperate for experience within that field, which I don't think many people are desperate for experience within meat processing, I'm sorry to say. When it comes to non-UK labour, either from the EU or further afield, we've been seeing reduced numbers willing to come to the UK. The immigration barriers of salary and skill, let's not forget these are lower paid jobs where the UK wouldn't prioritise these as essential workers, where the visa requirements are lower. So the UK wouldn't do this, so that makes getting these people in very difficult. This has been, and the skill has been raised way beyond what we can manage, and the cost of bringing in people is prohibitive, the visa costs, etc. These are problems around Brexit, and the simple fact is the UK just don't get it. The British government don't get it. Mr. Griffiths warned that the lack of supply could push up the cost of British meat. It will push up the supply and the cost of British meat because that's how supply and demand works. It will push up the cost, especially if there's scarcities with certain types of meat as well. The risk creating a two-tier system where the UK imports food produced to lower standards such as chlorinated chicken from the US, and only the affluent can afford high quality British meat, the BPC have said, and that's what is looking like it could happen depending on the requirements around Australian beef being exported into the UK. It's very possible that we may be flooded with cheaper Australian beef that's further going to put British meat producers out, which is a problem if for ecological reasons, but also for economic reasons as well. If you've got these farms don't just create jobs for themselves, they create jobs for multiple other people, and that all goes if these farms go under because of Brexit, because they can't because they've been undercut with meat prices or chicken prices or whatever. The Department for Environment, DEFRA, said it was working hard to ensure the producers across the UK have support and the workforce they need. So what have you been doing then? What have you been doing for the last 6 months to alleviate these problems? That's what I want to know, because they didn't actually offer anything specific. DEFRA said, we would like to see the sector highlight the domestic opportunities available. They've already done that, you idiot. Did you not see the earlier statement? Have you not been following the story? Whoever the clown is, I think it's George Eustace is in charge of DEFRA, right? They've already said that they've shown that there is employment opportunities within these industries. People in the UK haven't taken them. So this idea that we could highlight domestic opportunities that are available is rubbish, because people would have seen these and said no, because it's either too far or it's not a job they want. Food and farming businesses will also be able to employ EU nationals with settled and pre-settled status to help meet their labour demand. But the thing is, people, sort of seasonal workers may not have settled or pre-settled status, and these are the people who could come in during specific seasons within the year to help out with meat processing. That's not happened, is it? So again, another dumb point from Defra and George Eustace. So stupid. Oh yeah, maybe you're not getting workers because you're not advertising the domestic opportunities hard enough. Like, I think they are, pal. I'd really be surprised if they're not. If they just give up after like 5 minutes saying no one wants to apply. Georgie. Embarrassing stuff here. A real problem, sorry. The beef, pork and lamb meat sector is also suffering a labour shortfall, an industry body has said. So this is not just, beef, it's all of them basically struggling. The meat industry is 2 or 3 weeks away from a real problem, British Meat Processors Association Chief Executive Nick Allen has said. So what that means is that we haven't got a problem right now, but it will happen very soon and it will probably hit very hard. Some of the biggest meat producers are on the verge of telling farmers they do not have the capacity to process their livestock. He said, now I've watched, again, there's an American documentary I watched about this, where basically they said that if the animals go above a certain weight, it means that the meat processing plants can't take them. And that creates further problems with things like meat culling, which is absolutely barbaric, because you can't sell off that meat because the processing firm or plant doesn't have the weight requirements. So I don't know what happens in that situation. Not to mention the fact that certain animal types age. Lamb is within a certain period, and then it turns to mutton, right? Then it turns into a sheep. I think I'm not too clued in on the life cycle of sheep, but the same thing with beef. It turns from a calf into, I think, a cow. Chickens generally say the same. It becomes a full-grown chicken at some point. But the problem is that say if the British public want a lot of lamb, if the lamb can't be slaughtered and processed in time, then you're going to end up with a lot of mutton, which isn't that popular in the UK. I think that's something that gets exported to a country like France. If people in the UK don't buy mutton, that creates further problems within the supply chain. I know I'm rambling a bit here, but I'm hoping this is making sense. You're talking about working within very specific timescales, which the meat processing industry and the farms have to do, and the Brexit hasn't helped that at all. So while it's good news that hospitality industry is opening up as coronavirus restrictions relax, this is putting added strain on meat production, because obviously these hospitality, restaurants, cafes, whatever, they want access to meats. If the cafe sell meat, for example, if they can't get it, that creates a further bottleneck on the system, and that kind of shortage where maybe meat processors and farmers will have to choose between supplying a supermarket or supplying a restaurant. Wholesalers will have to decide that, and that creates problems on one or two sides. You might see limited menus in restaurants, or you might see scarcity on shop shelves, which we've already seen with things like fresh fruit and vegetables. While it's good news that we mentioned that, however, the Vegan Society said the situation could have ecological and animal welfare benefits. It said a low to no meat lifestyle includes veganism, were becoming more popular as people realise the environmental benefits of eating plant-based foods. Plant-based proteins, I think that's true to an extent, but the thing is, plant-based proteins are typically a bit more expensive, so that's a barrier, I think, for people to have more plant-based foods. People have been eating less meat over the past decade, most likely for environmental and health reasons. I think that is mainly because vegetarian food has gotten better, I think, and honestly, vegetable pizzas, in my opinion, are the best kind of pizzas. So I think that's kind of the reason why I think sort of Middle Eastern vegetarian food has become more popular as well. So I wouldn't say it's for sort of environmental and health reasons, or maybe in part for health reasons. I think it's more so that vegetarian food has come a long way since 2 decades ago, within Britain at least. Although consumption in the UK is still relatively high of meats and stuff, because people love chicken, beef, all that stuff. Not fish as much for an island, which is surprising. So they go on to say, we hope to see farmers gradually moving away from farming animals to growing crops for human consumption by providing food for the growing vegan population. The problem is you can't always grow crops everywhere. It mentions here, in addition, this is another person saying that in addition that more than 60% of agricultural land in the UK was only suitable for growing grass and not suitable for growing crops. So this idea that we can just use all the farmland for vegan products, sort of crops and stuff, doesn't work. But what you can see here, that massive shortage in meat processing is boosting, kind of the argument for veganism, because the UK simply doesn't have the facilities to process the meat, and that means that farms have to reduce the amount of animals they have because they won't be processed. And I don't think farmers generally don't want to have to put down animals. It's not good for business, and it's not good for morale either. That if you've sort of raised where the life cycle is for a sheep from the beginning towards the end of its life cycle, it must be quite demoralizing to put so much kind of energy into an animal and for it not to give you the benefits that you want. But at the same time, maybe this does raise a broader question about, is the consumption of animals right? And I'm leaning more towards the vegetarians as days go on. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Subscribe, support the channel on Patreon if you can. If not, just like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.